Sixth graders, it's Mrs. Reed for Tuesday, April 14th. I had to think there about the day. It's hard to keep track of that. I'm really missing you, but know that we are strong together. We will work to figure this distance learning out. I'm sorry we can't be in the classroom together. A big shout out to all of those of you that have been doing the assignments, have really been trying hard. I know it's harder for some families, just getting the internet and getting everything to work, but please make sure you're doing your personal best, have that good integrity. Learning is so important, and it's not about the grade. We hope you're motivated by something else, and that's your own life, your future. So we hope you are motivated to complete. We will be putting things into Power School, and just know that I send you all the best from Mrs. Reed. Ember is getting really big, and she's missing you. She's growing really fast. I think she's going to be a lot bigger than we thought when we adopted her, but that's okay. We're glad to have her in our home. She's given us a lot of entertainment while we're stuck home. And we take her for lots of walks and playtime in the yard. So to begin with, a reminder, if you did not complete the 3/31/20 Maya check-in, please do so. You'll see in Power School, it'll be marked as collected. So we're doing a collected or not collected, like a credit, no credit. And completing the assignments will earn you to make sure that you're ready to go on to 7th grade. Today we begin with a review of the Mighty Maya. Last week, hopefully you explored the websites. You still can do that. Learn as much as you can about this ancient civilization. To me, in years past, this has been some of the history that really interests students the most. They developed a very accurate 365-day calendar. They even had the quarter that we use for leap year. The calendar was really important for days that they would plant, and they relied on agriculture. The calendar, there was a religious calendar that about days where they had to worship or do certain things to please the gods. Maya were also they observed the stars and sky. With astronomy, they also developed a very good mathematics system. And there was a website, the Smithsonian website, where you could actually play a math game in the Maya math. They invented the concept of zero, which is the concept of place value. In other ancient civilizations, what the reason the Maya were so much more advanced is if you didn't have zero, you have to have a different symbol, like a different digit, the way we write our numbers or whatever symbols they used. You would have to have a different one for every number that you needed. With zero, we only have 9 different digits or 10 different digits that we use. Zero is one of them. And we can make every other number in our system. Without zero, and the Mayas actually had 20. They had 20 digits. They did a place value system of 20. Ours is based on 10. So after every 20, they would go up a place value. And so you have to kind of read it carefully to understand, because they use a system of 20. But that zero was really an advanced concept for mathematics, especially at the time of the Mayan Empire. This is about 250 CE, 250 years after Christ, and the Roman Empire, during the Roman Empire, was kind of just getting going in Europe. And they had advanced through most of Western Europe at that time. And then the Mayans were around until about 900 CE, which would have been AD in the past. And that was about 500 years before Columbus. It was about 100 years before the Vikings, when we talked about them earlier. So just kind of getting that concept, make sure you're looking at dates. The Mayans built great cities, but then they abandoned them. That's the mystery. They around 900 CE, they mysteriously abandoned those big cities with pyramids. They had ball courts. They had thousands of people in those cities. And historians are not exactly sure why. There's lots of different theories. Most Mayans, probably 90%, were farmers, were poor peasant farmers, and the entire family, children, all worked in the fields because eating was very important to survival. They didn't have a surplus of food. They didn't have extra food or places to go like we might have today. They had a very good system of mathematics, and that helped them with their calendar to know how to farm and to plan their cities. They also used geometry in the way that they actually had plans, blueprints laid out for their cities that archaeologists have found. So they were really, really advanced. This is an example of one of the pyramids that they built in one of their cities. And you can visit in Central America in some of those areas today. Make sure you please listen to this video, the review of the Mayans, and really listen for the information, their accomplishments, and their achievements. So we're just going to go through a few slides that add a little information and some visuals. So this is a map, and if you look at this map, look at A, B, C, or D, and figure out where the Maya Empire would be. And when you click on it forward, it will show you that the Mayas were in letter C, which is the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico. That was one of the physical features that we used. The Yucatan Peninsula sticks out from the bottom of Mexico, part of Guatemala, and part of Belize. So that area that's shaded purple for letter C is where the Maya Indians were. The others are different ancient civilizations. So this is zoomed in. When you look at this map, the dark green is the Maya territory, and then you see the lines of the present day border. So here's the border for Guatemala and Belize, and it does go a little into, it did go into Honduras and El Salvador. Those countries weren't there yet. The ancient Maya civilization developed in Mesoamerica. Meso means middle, and so it's another way of saying Middle America or Central America. It's a region. The ancient Maya's territory covered these areas: Mexico, Belize, Honduras, El Salvador, and Guatemala. And then you see a picture, a photograph of the ruins at Palenque, and they have the tropical rainforest. So you can see for many years, once they abandoned their cities, the jungle overgrew their temples. And when the Spanish first came, they thought a lot of them were just hills. Until archaeologists began to explore and dig, they didn't find a lot of the ruins like Tikal and Palenque, their big cities, because it was covered in jungle. The jungle grew very quickly. An archaeologist over here believe that the ancestors of the Maya first arrived in Central America more than 12,000 years ago. At first, these people were hunter and gatherers. So we talked about that with the development of civilization. They didn't have agriculture yet, and they traveled long distances to find food. But over time, they learned how to grow crops. They began to gather seeds and were able to plant. And by at least 1500 BCE, so BC, before Christ, they began to settle in permanent villages. This was the beginning of the Maya civilization. And some of the videos explain this, but we're kind of reviewing today and just making sure that you understand. Understanding how they may have gotten here so long ago, it's the same kind of theory that we talked about when we looked at the Vikings and the people settling Canada. Is the land bridge theory is one way. There are new theories also that possible a coastal route says that people sailed to the Americas, that they traveled in small boats along the coast from island to island, and they could have arrived in Central and South America much earlier than migrating all the way from the north down to the south, because North America and South America are huge, and it did take thousands and thousands of years maybe for cultures to migrate through those continents. So when you look at those maps, those are two different theories about how the Mayans came to the North and South American continent. To understand the time period in the world of the Maya, the ancient world, Maya cities begin to develop around 600 BCE, and at that time, ancient Egypt had existed for nearly 3,000 years. Ancient Greece would soon enter its golden age. So it was there, but it's not the golden age that we usually learn about when you study next year in 7th grade, when you study history in ancient Greece. That's going to be a little bit after, during the Mayan Empire. The Roman Empire had not yet been created, but it will be. It'll come around about 400 BCE, so 200 years later. Many scholars believe that the Maya civilization reached its peak between 250 and 900 CE, so that's current time after Christ walked on earth. Around the world, these things were also happening. So during this time, 250 to 900 CE, the Roman Empire ruled most of Western Europe, and then it collapsed about 450, 459 AD or CE. Europe experienced, after the Roman Empire fell, experienced increasing warfare between groups of people, declining population and trade during a period known as the Middle Ages. At this same time, in the Middle East, Muhammad became the leader of an emerging religion, Islam, so the beginning of the Muslim religion. So the Jewish people were way back to the ancient Egyptian time, way back in BC. With Christ, right after Christ it was Christian, so now the Catholic Church has split, or the Jewish church, there are now Christians that believe Christ was the Messiah. So two world religions. Now we have Jewish and we have Christian, even though they believe in the same God. But that event split those two religions. And then you have Muslim developing. And then in East Asia, you have Buddhism. This is all happening, the development of these world religions around this same time. And then Hinduism will be in India around that kind of similar time periods. You'll learn more about the 5 world religions in 7th grade. But religion was really important to these ancient civilizations. They didn't have science, so they didn't understand a lot about the world. And the priests and the leaders that they chose, they believed to be related to the gods. So they had a wide variety of gods that ruled over different area of life, like one for the harvest. Some gods were connected to forces of nature, such as rain. And so if they needed it to rain for the crops, they had to do something to please that god. Some of the ancient religions, especially as we get into the Aztec on Thursday, used human sacrifices. But it wasn't because, and I asked students to not focus in on the gore. Sometimes I know you're middle school, and sometimes that gore is what appeals right away, but it's horrible. It wasn't that they were horrible people. They were people just like you and I. And it was probably just as scary for them to have somebody sacrifice, like a family member, to be chosen. But they believed they had to do it, and it was seen as an honor because they didn't understand science. And they thought that that is how it would rain, or that is how the gods would make the crops grow for them. So it wasn't that they were bloodthirsty. It was a way, sometimes it was a way to punish, like captives, but it was more to please the gods. It was what they thought they understood about the world. It was what they thought they understood of how things would happen. So if they were unhappy, if the gods were unhappy, they could bring death and destruction. So instead of losing one person, you might lose the whole city. They truly believed that could happen by the power of the gods. The gods had many different forms. The Maya often drew the same god in many different ways. For example, these images below are 2 different gods, and you can see them interpreted in the paintings. So religion was a very important part in ancient civilization because they explained how things happened through religion, and they only knew. They didn't go to school. They didn't have, most people didn't have books. The Maya did have codices, but those were the priests that would have written in them, or scribes, and it would have been very few. Most people only had to take the word and obey what the priest said. There wasn't a lot of free thinking like what we have in our society. Remember this chart. You already copied it down, but take some time today to restudy it. Remember, they're in the Yucatan Peninsula. Chichen Itza is one of their famous, with the big pyramid, the observatory. Tikal was kind of the center of trade, their biggest city. And they were also in the countries of Guatemala, Belize, in parts of Central America. Most were peasant, poor farmers, and they just believed whatever the priest and the emperor, the leader, told them. Children worked with parents. They didn't have school. You can see now in this experience that might have not as been as fun as you might have thought it would have been in the past. Women wove bright colored fabrics. They still do today. You'll see a lot of the Mayan weaving throughout Guatemala and Belize still today, if you were to travel there. They played a ball game called Poke-a-Poke. They had extreme ball courts, big for the city where they could have an audience. They used astronomy to develop an accurate calendar. They developed the number system. They carved picture writings called glyphs. Sometimes they're called hieroglyphs. Usually the Mayans, because they were kind of rough pictures, were called glyphs. And then they carved them into a large stele, which was the stone monument. And there were some pictures in the slideshows last week. They abandoned cities to live in the jungle. That's the mystery, around 900 CE. And nobody really knows for sure. There's lots of different theories why that happened. So they were still there when about 500 years later, when Cortez, the Spanish conquistador, arrives. But they were in small groups, and they were out in the jungle. They weren't in their big cities as a civilization. They had kind of broke apart and were just surviving and were farming. So I'll end today with a quote I found. Some days are better, some days are worse. Look for the blessings instead of the curse. Be positive, stay strong, and get enough rest. You can't do it all, but you can do your best. I'm always thinking of you, and I miss you lots. Miss not being with you in the classroom. And I'm going to go ahead and sign off with that. Have a great day, 6th graders. Good luck. Make sure you're studying the Mayans with the lesson. There's no assignment today, just going through that and reviewing and listening to the video.